hello all, and welcome to the Rails board meeting. This is Friday, January 28th, 2022, and I'm Thomas Stagg, President of the Rails board, and I call this meeting to order at 1 p.m. In accordance with the Government Emergency Administrative Act, PA 100-0640, the Rails Board of Directors find an in-person meeting is not practical or prudent, and believes it is in the best interest of Rails to hold a virtual meeting to perform essential business. Everyone, please remember to unmute yourself before you speak and say your name when making a motion or a comment. All votes will be by roll call. Thank you. Emily, will you please call a roll?
Sure. Sue Busenbark. Here. Ellie Cox. Alice Creason. Robin Hellenthal. Here. Diane Hollister.
Here. Here.
Chris Kenny.
Here.
Jennifer McIntosh.
Here.
Scott Poynton.
Here.
Becky Spratford.
Here.
Thomas Stagg.
Here.
Beth Tuppen.
Here.
Monica Tolva.
Here.
Alex Vancina.
Here.
Karen Voidick.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Now for recognition of guests and announcements. We will handle guest and public comments at the same time. Emily, will you read the names of the guests who are participating via Zoom?
Yes. Monica Harris, Emily Feister, Deirdre Brennan, Sharon Swanson, Layla Heath, Greg McCormick, Illinois State Library, Biz Lindsay Ryan, sorry. Stacy Palmisano, Mary Witt, Anna Beam, Joe Philippek, Ryan Hebel, Ann Slaughter, and Mark Hatch. Did I miss anyone?
Thank you, Emily. If Emily did not read your name, please state your name and your affiliation or put it in the Zoom chat so that she can read it and add it to the minutes. We are handling public comments via Zoom or by previous submission to Emily. Emily, did you receive any comments?
I did not.
Okay. Does anyone have any public comments at this time? Okay, let's move on to agenda item number 5, adoption of the consent agenda. We have 5.1 of the adoption of the agenda, 5.2, the Rails board minutes of November 19th regular meeting, 5.3 Rails board minutes of November 19th closed session meeting, and 5.4 approval of disbursements December 2021 and January 2022. Does anyone wish to remove any item from the consent agenda for further discussion? If not, may I have a motion and a second for approval of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Scott. Can I have a second?
Second, Hallie.
Thank you, Hallie. Emily, can you please call roll?
Sure. Sue Busenbark.
Yes.
Ellie Cox.
Yes.
Alice Creason.
Yes.
Robin Hellenthal.
Yes.
Diane Hollister.
Yes.
Chris Kenny.
Yes.
Jennifer McIntosh.
Yes.
Scott Poynton.
Yes.
Becky Spratford.
Yes.
Beth Tuppen.
Yes.
Monica Tolva.
Yes.
Alex Vancina.
Yes.
Karen Voidick.
Yes.
And Thomas Stagg.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Motion carries. Next, we have Sharon Swanson with the Rails Financial Report.
Good afternoon. You will find the financial statements for the months of November and December in your packet since we did not hold a meeting in December. You will notice that we developed a combined balance sheet. We included a combined balance sheet showing both the detail of the general fund and the capital projects fund, as well as the total of the two, to give you a view of Rails's governmental funds as a whole. The December 31st general fund cash and investment balance of $20 million would fund approximately 20.8 months of operations. Revenues through December of $5,539,728 were $1,166,335 under budget. This is primarily due to the APC payments being received intermittently throughout the year versus them being budgeted evenly throughout the year. As of January 26, Rails did receive an additional 2 out of the remaining 4 outstanding live and learn payments totaling $2,145,000, which means that we have now received $5,904,386, or 59% of the total fiscal year 2022 APC grant award.
Thank you,
The
Greg
Illinois-
McCormick.
Yes,
Sorry.
thank you, Greg. The Illinois State Comptroller's Office currently has 1 remaining voucher in process for 1 of the 2 remaining live and learn payments. And we're still expecting another portion of the grant that comes a little bit later in the year usually. On December 9th, Rails received the funds for 2 additional grants from the state library. And the first of these is for the ongoing development of L2, and it was in the amount of $70,356. The second is for specialized cataloging in the amount of $94,050. The under budget APC grant revenues are partially offset by $39,731 of the state grant revenues related to these 2 projects. And as Rails incurs expenses related to these projects, these revenues will be recognized in the general fund and will reduce the budgeted deficit. Investment income was $7,604 through December, or 47.2% below the budgeted amount, as both the Illinois funds and Hinsdale money market rates are remaining below the rate that we had budgeted. Both Illinois funds and Hinsdale Bank's interest rates did increase to 0.066 and 0.11% since October, and this 0.03% increase is the first we've seen in a year. So we are looking up, and the Federal Reserve is expected to raise interest rates up to 4 times during this fiscal year, with the first increase expected in March. At the November board meeting, PMA was designated as a depository for Rails with the intention of discussing and evaluating our investment options internally. The $3,869,387 balance in Illinois funds has not been required for day-to-day operations over the years. And our contact at PMA that we've been talking to had recommended that we invest the funds in treasury notes in 4 $966,000 increments with laddered maturities of 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, and 24 months. So we did this last week place a total of $3,864,000 with PMA. And the rates that we locked in were 0.2% for the 6 month, 0.45% for the 12 months, 0.7% for the 18 month, and 0.9% for the 24 month. And these rates are all well above current market rates. But I did want to note, since interest rates can change rapidly during periods of rising interest rates, which we may be approaching very, very soon, given the Federal Reserve's expected actions. We may temporarily fall behind the market rate, but with maturities occurring every 6 months, we should be able to stay ahead of the market rate over the long term. We anticipate earning approximately $7,300 in interest over the first 6 months of these treasury investments. And in comparison, Illinois funds has earned $544 over the past 6 months. So we see this as more of a long-term investment strategy for Rails. Expenditures through December of $6,292,476 were $311,655 below budget, as nearly all major cost categories were under the budgeted amounts, with the notable exception, of course, of supplies, postage, and printing expenditures due to the completion of the laptop purchase earlier this year. And I think that's about all that I have. May I answer any questions?
I have a question,
Yes.
just on the check and voucher register, is it the right point in time to ask a question about that?
You most certainly can.
Okay, I had three little things I didn't understand, and it could just be me, but on one of them, it was a Smart Horizons Career Online Education for Rockford Public Library of $21,900. What was that for?
Smart Horizons is a career online high school program that we do for the members. So it's something that we were billed and that we then bill them for. Am I correct in saying that, Deirdre?
So we have Layla here, not to keep passing things off, but Layla is the expert on this. If you want to say something about that, Layla.
Yes, it's the scholarship fees, and that's what happens. It's a pass through. Smart Horizons bills us, and then we bill the libraries.
Okay, it's not just for Rockford though, right? Is that?
Yes, Rockford had a large purchase though in this past month. They've been very active in this program. They're doing a great job working with the community on this.
Right.
Because I don't see any other Smart Horizons Career Online for all the other libraries.
They only buy them as they're needed.
Oh, okay.
So that's how the scholarships work. So typically the libraries will buy them in, a couple at a time or a handful at a time.
Okay.
But Rockford has such a large program. They've been buying sometimes, 10 at a time.
Okay.
And the scholarships are $10.95 a piece. So
Which is a discounted rate that Layla
Yes.
Negotiated for all the member libraries. And
Yeah.
Rails pays for the platform, and then the libraries pay for the scholarships.
Yes, and actually we just this year, we've been working so much with them and been so active with the scholarships that they are waiving our platform fee, which to put some perspective on that, we used to pay $25,000 a couple years ago with Gale, and then with Smart Horizons, we negotiated to $15,000, and now we have totally eliminated that platform fee as well as lowering the scholarship costs. So
Okay.
and we're excited about it, and it's a great program.
Yeah, okay, I just wasn't aware of it. The other thing was the Continental Transport Solutions. What is delivery outsourcing? What is that?
It's
Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. That is outsourcing of our Burr Ridge and also our former North Suburban Library System area.
Right, Wheeling.
The
Right.
delivery, the Wheeling area. Yes.
We've contracted with CTL, Continental Transportation Logistics, for, I want to say 6 or 7 or 8 years now, maybe more, to do a lot of the sorting and delivery. They have a big warehouse in Elmhurst, and
Okay.
they do a lot of the sorting and delivery for the sort of the Western, metro area. It's the heaviest volume by far.
Okay, I thought maybe
yeah.
it was like substitute drivers.
No,
Okay,
it's the contract. Yep.
okay, all right.
Although there have been a lot of substitute drivers. You're right about that for sure.
Well, yeah, I know that I've heard people are unhappy with the routes being canceled every once in a while. And I thought that when I saw this and I went, oh, if there's substitute drivers, then why aren't they driving all the routes? But if that's just for the one area for the most part. Okay, that's all I had. I was just looking through it.
No, of course. Thanks for asking.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Layla and Dee, too.
Sure. No problem.
Any more questions for Sharon? Okay, thank you, Sharon, for your report. And Layla, I agree with Hallie's comment in the chat there. Good job on that that program.
Yes.
Okay, on to number 7, reports. I will start off with the reports at this time. I have no report at this time. We did have reports in your packet from the Advocacy Committee, the Consortia Committee, EDI, Resource Sharing, and Universal Services Committee. Does anyone have any questions or additions to the reports? Okay, Monica has a question in chat. Want to know what committees have school librarians on it?
Let's see,
Advocacy.
advocacy, universal service, EDI, resource sharing. I'm not sure. I don't think the consortia committee has anybody on, has a school librarian.
Yeah.
And I don't think that the executive committee does either. And I don't remember about the policy committee but they haven't met in a while, so I apologize. But basically the member, the sort of externally focused committees, all have a school librarian, except for consortia.
Aside from the standing committees, the strategic planning group
Right,
had, of course.
right. Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question,
Yes, thank you.
Monica? Sure. And if that was a subtle way of volunteering to be on a committee, that's great to hear. I think you've escaped that so far, haven't you?
We'll see about me, but I will certainly recruit my colleagues.
Sure.
Okay.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, any other questions or additions to the report? If not, next up is Deidre with the Rails monthly report.
Thank you, Tom. Yeah, as you can imagine, I have a fair amount to report because it's been 2 months since we've met, and there's been a lot going on despite the fact that it's been the holiday season. So I'll just jump right in. So starting out with my report, you've seen the committee report, so that's the first part of our reports, and then it moves into my report, and I have some updates also, as well as some highlights. So on the very first paragraph is about resource sharing and the LSAP Sustainability Working Group. So I wanted to update you all that we actually had a meeting just yesterday, although it seems like a lot longer ago than yesterday at this point. And this is very interesting. And this is something that was put together by Heartland and more specifically, SHARE, which is their consortium. And Cassandra Thompson, who is the director of SHARE, reached out a couple of weeks ago to various LSAP directors, specifically Kendall Orison and Carolyn Coulter and Jennifer Slaney, about whether their LSAPs would be interested in working with SHARE to create or develop whatever a statewide LSAP. And Monica and Anne and I were also invited, and Greg McCormick was there. So it was this, as I say, it was just yesterday. It was a brainstorming meeting. Of course, this you will notice that I did not mention SWAN or CCS or Pinnacle. And the reason for that is that RSA and Prairie Cat, as you know quite well, I think, are quite dependent, particularly RSA, on Rails for funding. And the work of the LSAP Sustainability Working Group at their last meeting, as you will see in my report, one of the priorities that they identified was to investigate a statewide ILS platform. And that came from Rebecca Malinowski of CCS. And lo and behold, this is all sort of serendipitous. So we had this meeting yesterday, and one of the outgrowths of this meeting was that we all agreed that this is definitely worth exploring, and that we would definitely also need an outside person, a consultant, expert, to lead any sort of process like this, in order to assure that it's very transparent, that a lot of all the people that I mentioned who were at the meeting have a vested interest, and I don't say that with any kind of criticism. It includes me as well. And so you need somebody who can be very objective and really look out for the interests of all of the members and the taxpayers, as well as the systems. So that happened yesterday. I had already begun investigating some possible consultants because of the direction from the working group at their last meeting in whenever that was, earlier in January or in December. It all kind of blurs together. Anyway, so I don't know if some of you may have heard of Carson Block, who is a noted, Alex is nodding his head, Becky, yes, very well-known technology consultant. We've worked with him before. I had just set up a call with him on next Friday. So the entire group that met yesterday is going to be talking with Carson next Friday, just to sort of get an overview of this would be a huge project. This would not happen quickly or easily. There's technology involved there, because you'd have to size up the systems. They're not all on the same system, although the LSAPs that were at the meeting. Obviously it's political because, members have, are tied to their identities as members of LSAP, et cetera, et cetera. I don't need to explain all this. I just wanted you to know that this happened. It's quite an exciting development, but it's going to take quite a while before anything happens. I think it's safe to say. Any questions? We'll certainly keep you updated, obviously. All right. You're probably processing that. Happy to, answer questions later, offline, whatever. I've been checking in with Senator Murphy on a regular basis. In fact, I just checked in about half an hour ago to get an update. I have not heard back yet. Chicago Public Library, yes, we had an excellent meeting with Chris Brown, and we are going to be meeting with him regularly. I think at this point, it's just going to be Monica and me. I'm hoping that we'll expand those meetings to include, maybe Heartland and, some of the other stakeholders, but we thought we'd sort of bring them along slowly. He's a very busy guy, and there's a lot of, Illinois things to learn. So we had a very good conversation. Find More Illinois, I'm really delighted to tell you that the Skokie Public Library has signed up with Find More. This is a really big, great thing to have such a large standalone library. It's going to be great for the current members and the users, and Helen Plum has also, one of Alex's libraries, has also signed up. So we are very excited about that, and I think a definite harbinger of more great things to come. Certification in schools, we did hire just this past week or 2 weeks ago, we hired Jeanette DeRookie as our research assistant to help us with the school data project. This is a temporary position, and I have every intention of writing up a grant request to the state library. This is a cooperative project at Heartland, Rails, ILA, and the state library are all very interested in getting more data, accurate, up-to-date, et cetera, data about school libraries. So very happy that she's on board, and she's very excited to be involved in a project that is so important. And we will definitely have her come to a future board meeting so you can all meet her as well. Let's see, what else is in here that I wanted to draw your attention to? Looking at this month at Rails, there's a lot of information there. You'll see a survey of My Library Is, My Library Is program. I guess there's some good news and bad news in here. I mean, not as many libraries are aware of the campaign as we had hoped. But on the other hand, we got a lot of good information in this survey, and we'll be taking steps to, to adapt it so that it's more usable for people. I think it's, this is just something where we have to really persevere, because libraries are at very different places in how much time and energy they can spend on sort of marketing themselves. But this does speak to one of the goals in our new strategic plan that you guys, some of you called out this morning, related to helping libraries articulate their value. Then finally, next month, we will finally give you a full report on the delivery and the delivery RFP. We had hoped to do it sooner, but there's been so much. It's been very difficult in delivery, and it was referenced earlier. Karen brought it up in terms of having to cancel routes. We hate doing that. But we had a lot of sickness at the beginning of January. I don't think it's happening. It hasn't happened so much in the last week or so, last 2 weeks. We hate doing it. I imagine I don't really need to tell you that. And I think that's about it for my reports. Any questions? A lot in there, I know.
I had a question. I was hoping to get some clarification about the difference between Find More Illinois and a ILS, a shared ILS among the states.
Sure. So Find More Illinois is not a shared catalog. It is really an interlibrary loan program utility that brings together, in most states, or in a lot of other installations in other states, it brings together shared catalogs like a Prairie Cat, like Swan, like RSA, CCS. The platform is called Share It. It is a product of Autographics. It is installed in many other states, including Indiana, including Florida, including Pennsylvania, Massachusetts. Generally, and other states do not have as many standalone libraries as Illinois, in its wisdom, has. So you don't have as many libraries that aren't part of shared catalogs. So we've been focusing on, up to this point, we have had a lot of focus on standalone libraries, to bring them, to make resource sharing between the standalones and the shared catalogs easier, because Rails has a lot of those. But we're also just had 2 meetings with 2 consortia to talk about that, all of the libraries in those consortia joining Find More. And we had that meeting with Prairie Cat just a couple of days ago. Ann and I both attended, and then we met with Pinnacle last week. So it is not a union it's not a shared catalog. It's the next step. If you don't find it in your shared catalog, you can click on Find More and go and look and search in other catalogs in Illinois. Does that answer your question, Beth?
It does, but can you explain more about the other piece that you had talked about first? I'm surprised that any of these entities would be considering giving up their vendor and going with a whole new one.
No, they don't have to give up their vendor. They just, we just link their catalog through this virtual catalog that is Find More. I don't suppose Ann's here. She would be able to explain it better. It essentially functions through, there she is, through mostly through Z3950. Do you want to say a few words, Anne? I hope, please.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And, I'm also happy to follow up offline to answer more detailed questions. But fundamentally, Find More Illinois is a platform that is designed to connect multiple catalogs. So it's not a replacement at all for a catalog. It's an addition. So we kind of think of it as being concentric circles of resource sharing opportunities. So, first there's your own library. And then if you're in a consortium, that's kind of the next circle. Find More Illinois is a circle around that one. It connects more than just the libraries in a consortium to standalone libraries, to participating libraries in other consortia, so that they can all more seamlessly lend to and borrow from each other via this unified interface.
It's
Does
a
that make
virtual
sense?
catalog. We like to think of it as a virtual catalog too. So
Mhm.
does that help?
Well, one follow-up question. I was hopeful, but I kind of came to the conclusion that this wouldn't help with unserved. You'd have to have a library that you're affiliated with to get materials from these.
That is true. But on the other hand, it can connect non-public libraries as well. So that, is a potential way for, if you don't have a public library, but you're, if you're a student at UIC, for example, they used to, are they still in it, Anne, UIC? They used to.
Yes, they are participating as a lender.
Right. So.
And then what is the LSAP sustainability project where there's a statewide ILS platform?
Well, the sustainability working group is looking at ways to ensure that the existing LSAPs have enough money to continue long into the future, whether that's through, combining some of their services or, lots of other things that we're looking at. The meeting that happened yesterday is one of the projects that we had, the possible projects that we had been talking about at the sustainability working group that was, as I say, brought up by Rebecca Malinowski as a way for libraries that aren't as well funded or school libraries or very small public libraries to have a cheaper, less expensive option than some of the current LSAPs. I mean, some libraries just can't afford to belong to an LSAP. And so we're trying to, find different solutions for libraries that have different issues and different funding levels.
I think that's great. I think that actually plays right into some of that equity.
Yes, exactly.
That we face
right.
or maybe don't even think about.
Yes, and there is a goal actually in the strategic plan that kind of speaks to that. It's objective 4 of goal 1, as it happens, which says work collaboratively with members, Heartland and State Library to identify and support appropriate and affordable shared catalog solutions and expand resource sharing to all libraries and residents. So that really speaks to the, as you say, the equity and the fact that not, there is no one size fits all solution. That help a little bit? We're glad to talk more offline, as Anne said. I appreciate your questions. Okay. So are there other questions? Okay.
Okay.
I think that does it for me then, Tom.
Okay. Thank you, Dee.
Yep.
And that was some great discussion there. And now on to the Rails Service of the Month, e-resources for all libraries. Layla and Anne. Anna, are you there?
I'm
yes.
here. Hi, everybody. I'm going to share my screen right quick. You guys should all have this handout, the e-content for all types of libraries in your board packet. Awesome. Okay, cool. And you can see it and you can hear me. Great, good news. All right, so I'm going to talk today about e-content services that Rails provides and some of the new things that are going on with those services. The first thing I'm going to talk about is sort of the biggest change that we've made externally to e-content and Rails, and that is the inky.org library. And this is something that in the past you've probably heard us refer to as BiblioBoard or the BiblioBoard library, or pop-up pics or something like that. And what was going on with BiblioBoard is that we were just not seeing the level of engagement that we wanted to with the platform. It was a really large, really eclectic collection of e-content. Everything was available simultaneously. It was available to everyone in Illinois, no cost. That has not changed. But what has changed is that we have refocused the content that's available on the platform. And we have turned it into a platform that really focuses on Illinois creators, and on things made for and by Illinoisans. So we're calling it the inky.org library. It includes two main collections. It is the Indie Illinois collection, which are self-published ebooks written by Illinois authors, and then the Rails community collections, which are these multimedia e-content collections that are created by people in Illinois libraries. They include things like local history, yearbooks, historical photos, writing projects, community cookbooks, etc. And we chose to focus on these things because it's really where we saw the most engagement with the platform. And it also helps us to tie this platform more directly to inky.org, which is the next e-content service that I want to highlight. So I've got sort of the summary of it there. It is our suite of self-publishing tools and resources that helps people to create ebook files. What we've done with inky.org is we have updated the website to connect it to more directly to the inky.org library to bring those two resources together. We also have had almost 250 ebooks created via this program since October of 2019 when we launched it. I'm doing more outreach about inky.org now as well. And so I'm going to be doing a virtual program at the Clarendon Hills Public Library next month. And then I've got a few other programs lined up in the spring and summer to present to other libraries and their users. Are there any questions about inky.org, the inky.org library, or BiblioBoard before I move on to eRead? All right, cool. I'm going to go ahead and talk about eRead then. So eRead Illinois, it is our popular materials e-content collection hosted on Baker & Taylor's Access 360 platform. It serves all types of libraries, and we have over 57,000 items available on it. What's new with eRead, we have made a couple of large additions to the content that is available. I'm going to talk a little bit about those in just a minute, but that is one of the biggest changes that we've made to eRead lately. We've also continued to provide some updates to the support that we provide for our eRead member libraries. We created, for example, we created an IPLAR dashboard. So public libraries now, instead of having to email me and ask me for inventory numbers when it's time to do IPLAR, it can just go to this website, this dashboard that we created, and type in their library name, and they automatically get shown the inventory for eRead at the end of their fiscal year. So things like that. We added a new suggestion form so that libraries could make acquisition suggestions for the collections. And we've also been providing SOPA compliance information for our school library members. Additionally, one of the exciting things we have going on with the eRead collection is that we have an upcoming diversity audit that we're going to be doing. We're working with our vendor partner, Baker & Taylor, and their DEI auditing service that they've just updated through Collection HQ to take a look at the eRead collection, see how representative it is, and then make some decisions on how we want to, move forward with creating a more diverse collection. And so I'm going to scroll down to the next page, and I want to talk specifically about some of those content additions that we've made to eRead Illinois. So this is one of the, I think, really exciting things that have been going on over the last couple months. We've added a whole lot of new content to the collection. The first one I'm going to talk about is the most recent. We just added over 5,000 titles. We transferred those from the BiblioBoard library, so that large eclectic collection that we had that nobody was really looking at on BiblioBoard. We took a lot of those titles and we moved them over to the eRead Illinois collection. They are now available to our member libraries via Access 360. All the titles that we moved are available for simultaneous use, so no holds, no waits. Everybody can check everything of every one of those 5,000 items out at the same time if they want to. It includes a lot of titles for students, for kids, from publishers like Abdo and Capstone and Time for Kids. The entire Recovering the Classics collection moved over to Access 360, and there is some adult nonfiction in there as well. This transfer started last month in December of 2021. It is nearly complete. The vast majority of the titles have moved over to Access 360. We've got most of the MARC records available to our libraries. We are just sort of tying up a handful of loose ends with that transfer, but it's almost done. And then the other exciting addition that we made to eRead in the last year is the K-12 e-content grant that we got. We got that $125,000 grant as part of the CARES Act. We purchased for that grant from December of 2020 through June of 2021. We added just under 3,000 ebooks and just under 1,000 audiobooks, specifically for the K-12 audience. And that was done in sort of reaction to the increased usage that we saw from school library users because of the pandemic, because of remote learning, things like that. So we were able to add a large number of items to the collection for that reason. And then just a couple of other areas of activity I wanted to highlight. We do have the e-resource access pulse page on the Rails website. We do update that regularly to reflect some of the changes in the library ebook landscape. If you haven't looked at that in a while, I recommend checking it out. And then we also continue to monitor the pandemic's impact on e-content. The latest activity in that, I presented at ILA in October on the pandemic's impact on e-content. I was able to be joined by a couple of some colleagues from academic, public libraries, and also the Heartland Library System to talk about the way that the pandemic has impacted e-content usage in our organizations. That is the update that I have. I've got a couple of links on the sheet for you there too. That first link is to the Inky.org library, so you can check out that collection. A link to Inky.org, to eRead Illinois, so you can get more information about that program. And then that last link is for the Pulse page. Do I have any questions?
Anna, there's one in chat from Monica.
And Jennifer has her hand raised as well.
Okay.
When you get to.
I'm going to stop sharing.
Anna, Monica Tolva asks, what are the pros, cons for school libraries to participate in eRead Illinois?
That is a great question. Broadly, it is a very large collection. The number that I have on your sheet, the over 57,000 ebooks and e-audiobooks, is actually wrong. It's actually closer to 62,000 now that we've added those simultaneous use materials. So it's a really large collection. There is content for all ages, but for schools specifically, one of the great things about it is that you can take that collection and you can scope it to different ages or audience levels. You can scope out items that you don't want your students to have access to or that you do want them to have access to. So you can really tailor it to your school. And it is a very reasonable cost for school libraries right now. Those are the really broad reasons why I think schools should participate in eRead Illinois. There's lots of other ones, and I'm happy to answer those offline if you want to shoot me an email.
I'm glad to hear about the scoping. That would be a hard thing to say that there's 62,000 items, but if half of them were way below or above the reading level of that particular school library. So that's good to know that that's a strong feature.
Yes, absolutely. And then Jennifer, you had a question?
Yeah. So I've been thinking about the Inky.org platform in relation to academic libraries for a while. It's been on my mind long before today. And because I love that it has the authorship piece right there with it. So it's featuring, but it's also, I think that we haven't really done any of the work in the academic libraries to think about how we can really push this out to writing faculty to get it and really kind of get it in the classroom. I think it would be a really great project platform. So I think there's just some work that's not really something for you to necessarily to do, but maybe we need to kind of think about how we can collaborate on an outreach for that. But the other piece of that is I don't think that collection is exposed in the iShare catalog. I think I'm not sure if it's maybe something we have to expose, or if there isn't a back end connection between Ex Libris and the collection. I was going to recommend that we get that in place so that the academics can select it.
That's a great idea. I know we've had some there aren't MARC records for a lot of the stuff that's on there. So yeah, some sort of back connection. I think that is a great idea and something to work towards. Yeah. And then
because that would be a big selling point, I think, when we talk to the faculty, like your students' books would actually show up in our collection. They could search for it and see it exposed next to other content.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would love to work on some more promotion to academic libraries. That is absolutely an area where I think we can grow, and where inky.org could be a great resource. So, or if it happens, let me know so I can share those as examples and testimonials.
Yeah, absolutely. I might just touch base with you offline separately. With some ideas.
Please do.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Jennifer. That's a great suggestion. Yeah.
Yes. Any other questions for Anna and Layla? No? Okay, well, thank you very much. Now we will hear from the Illinois State Library. Greg, I got to tell you that in my class, we've been using the Illinois Digital Archives to every length and end. And I was excited to see the Eureka Pumpkin Parade digitals in there from the 1930s. It was awesome.
That's terrific. I was having a conversation with well, first of all, good afternoon, everyone. So I should start properly, I suppose. I was having a conversation with a high school teacher who teaches geography in the Edwardsville School District. And it was very casual. And he started talking about their study of the Illinois library delivery routes as it relates to geography. I had no idea. They were using the mapping services that both library systems have used from now GeoMark in their classroom. So that's interesting.
Wow, that is fascinating.
That we funded 2 projects now. So that's terrific, that are affecting high school curriculum. So anyway, good afternoon, everyone. So it's good to join you today. As many of you know, probably we were closed or partially closed for about 3 weeks due to COVID mitigations, and we're back in full force this week. So it really is nice to be here and with all of the staff here at the State Library again. So also, you probably have noted too in some press clips that are going around the state, the announcement regarding the American Rescue Plan Act grants. Well, we've had those in place and we're now making reimbursements. There were over 211 grants issued, $5.7 million to libraries throughout the state. And we're glad that that is all in process and making a difference. This week, we also finalized what we believe will be the final count of FY22 school library district grants that we shall allocate. It appears that 672 school districts will qualify this year. That is up 25 from last year. So that is a nice increase to see participation in that grant program. Those public libraries that are part of this discussion and should have already received a message. We did extend the due date for the FY22 public library per capita and equalization grants to February 15, partially due to our closure, but as much, some mitigations that were occurring in other local libraries as well, where they simply couldn't get this paperwork filed. We extended also was the grant deadline for the FY22 Live and Learn construction grant applications. So we look forward to receiving those. Closely tied to that is the mapping project that I know Karen Egan spoke to Rails members, I believe, last week.
At the member update, right? Yes.
That is, we do believe the finishing touches are finalized. COVID was not kind to us in the last weeks trying to get that resolved either. But we have our messaging ready to get that out to applicants this year. Certainly libraries will be encouraged, even if you've already applied, to go in and check the information that's provided. The grant program for public library per capita grants does have, a resolution process if libraries do see some issues. However, in testing this, with what was certified with the Secretary's Index Department for municipal or libraries serving municipal boundaries only, the methodology used by GeoMark seems to be very, very accurate. So we presume it will be for public library districts as well. The exception would be, and we'll give more information, is if there's been a change in the taxing area that has not yet made it through the reporting process with the Department of Revenue, which is where the service areas are actually all derived from that the university is utilizing for this project. So we look forward to getting this all resolved and also getting the grants allocated with the increased funding that was allotted last year and this fiscal year. Speaking of funding, yes, we were pleased that we could get payments issued to the library systems, 2 of those over $2 million for Rails. And we will be looking at the release of the federal funding probably the middle to end of next month. That funding has to be drawn from the federal government and placed in the state's checking account before payments are issued. And that somewhat works as a reimbursement for delivery services, watching expenditure levels, because it is federal money and not state funded dollars. For the bigger picture, the General Assembly is coming back next week. The governor's budget address is also next week, so we look forward to hearing more about that. It is expected right now, and the secretary has included it in his budget request, that there is an increase for library system funding in the FY23 budget request.
Fantastic.
This is all very, very preliminary, and we have to get through the entire budget process, but I think that is good news for the library systems and all of the libraries who are really quite dependent upon the services of the system, whether it's delivery and all types of supportive resource sharing and other services provided. So we look forward, and as I have more details, I will share that with the library system as well.
Can I ask you a question, Greg? Of course, I have a
Sure.
question. That is wonderful news. As you know, we talked about this a lot last year. Is this so I take it it's an increase in the per capita
Would be an increase
amount?
it would be an increase in the appropriation that is utilized for the area and per capita calculations. Yes.
That is awesome news. Awesome. Thank you.
Really, I think I can end there unless there are questions.
We're speechless.
Wow.
I know, it doesn't happen very often. That is truly great news. We had many conversations at the end of last year about the fact that our budget had not been increased in 10, 11 years. So really appreciate that you listened and and helped out with that. Really appreciate it.
Greg, thank you very much. Some of the local schools that got some of the funding for new library stuff around here in Central Illinois. It's great to see those things in the paper. Thanks again.
You're very welcome.
And now we're on to number 8, new business. 8.1, changes to the board election process. Deidre?
Yes, thank you, Tom. So yeah, so I want to talk to you about this a little bit. And Biz, Lindsay Ryan is here to help me with this as well. This is related to our, obviously, the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Initiative. It's very much tied to our strategic plan goal of number 4, maybe. I just had it in front of me. No, 2. Rails models best practices in equity, diversity, accessibility, and inclusion. So we, and you know, there's a long memo in your packet about this, and you know, basically what we're proposing is that what I'm proposing today is that we spend the next year essentially looking at a way to get a more diverse, inclusive, and equitable board membership that really represents or reflects the members that we serve and the libraries that we serve. I'm not, I don't have a solution to propose today, but I do think, you know, this did come up last year a bit when we revised our bylaws. You know, Tom will recall, he was chair of the policy committee at that time, and we were looking at the bylaws and the nominating committee, and specifically the makeup of the nominating committee. And it became, you know, it finally, you know, dawned on me very specifically that the nominating committee doesn't really function as a nominating committee. It functions sort of as an election oversight, you know, process committee. Nothing wrong with that. That's how we've always done it. I think that's exactly the way Heartland does it. But you know what it means is that it's very much it's a self-nomination process. It's whoever nominates themselves becomes a candidate pretty automatically, unless for some reason they don't, you know, they apply to be you know, in the academic librarian seat and they're not an academic librarian. Well, that's not going to work. And so it's, you know, last year we made some efforts to diversify the board. And when I say diversity, I mean all kinds of diversity: job title, you know, type of library, geography, obviously ethnicity, you know, age, you know, all those things. We made some efforts. We certainly you know, recruited a lot of diverse candidates, but they didn't get elected. And we talked about this as a board also earlier this year, and you know, what we could do about that. So I think really what we need to do is just sort of start from scratch and, you know, find a process that works for us. In the memo, I described what the process that ILA uses, and I'm, you know, so that you have, you know, and, you know, I know that some of you have been on the ILA board, so you know that, you know, a particular person, I'll just pick on Becky because I think you are a candidate for the ILA board. Not picking on you, just calling you out a bit. And so I assume you're running as a trustee?
Yes, and I paired against another trustee, correct?
You are paired against another trustee. So that way, a trustee is going to get elected. It might not be Becky, it might be the other person, but it isn't going to just be, you know, the highest vote counts. It's organized by category that, you know, categories that ILA has identified and that we, you know, would identify in order to get a more diverse representation. So what I am proposing that we do for this year, since we have a vacancy, is that we And, we use the process that we have always used, which is that the executive committee, after we recruit candidates, the executive committee meets and interviews, and they always have had criteria. Many of you, or some of you have been on the executive committee, are on the executive committee now, know that in the past, when we have needed a school librarian replacement or academic librarian, or, we had criteria, we had questions, things that we've used are, some examples have been, what experience have they had, with Rails? I mean, that's obviously a general kind of criteria, but also, what's, what is their, what kind of, for school librarians, are they actually a certified, school librarian? Those kinds of things. So what I'm proposing is that this year, and for the vacancy, we would develop some criteria that would help us to get candidates who are diverse, who are from underrepresented communities, who have, actually diverse, lived experiences, and experience in EDI work. Maybe they've been part of our EDI initiative. Maybe they're on the committee, just so we can make a start. So that is what I'm proposing. And, maybe Biz, you would like to say a few words about why it's important to do this now?
Sure. I think this is something that a lot of boards are looking at and thinking about kind of what are the structural challenges that recreate boards that don't always reflect the populations we're trying to serve. And so I think, if we want to zoom out for a second and think about like, how do we change a process in order to do that? It's starting with removing the barriers that exist for certain folks to participate. And then it's thinking about kind of what are the structural changes we need to make to the processes so that it's as accessible as possible, that there's intentionality and transparency in what we're doing so that people can know and trust that this is going to be a fair process. And then I think, having a rubric for selection that takes into account some of these other pieces in terms of diversity of lived experience and identity, et cetera, is also a really valuable way to make sure that you want to think about it as this pipeline, and there's all these places where you can not be successful, right? That things can get jammed up. And so we want to think about what are all the obstacles to getting people even in the pipeline. And then once they have applied, what are the things that stop folks from getting selected or elected, and try to really strategically address those issues. I think, from and I'll talk about this when I do my presentation a little bit, is, we really want to be thinking about EDI, not as just this thing we do over here, but really from an asset-based place, that this is what helps, when you were talking about your statement earlier about everybody thriving, right? This is how we ensure that everyone thrives, is that we have all the perspectives in the room when we're making these decisions, so that when we're making these high level choices, we're aware of how this plays out for this population in this way. What is the impact and the ripple effect of all of our decisions? And that is much harder to do when you have a homogeneous lived experience and a homogeneous library experience to think about and consider the ways that your decisions will impact a variety of groups. And so that representation is really critical, but it will not happen accidentally. You will not just say, we want to be more diverse, so we're going to be more diverse. Like, it will take intentionality. It will take us thinking through kind of what are all those barriers, and then thinking through what are the parts of the system that we control that we can adjust to make this more likely that we will be successful in this way.
And Monica has pointed out in the chat that school libraries comprise 60% of the Rails membership, but she's the only school librarian representative. That is yet another issue. I mean, there are a lot of equity, diversity, inclusion issues. I do need to remind you all that we are required by the law, I believe it is in the statute, correct, Greg, that our board has to be, there has to be a majority of public library trustees on the board. And that seems to be like immutable because of the way that the funding of the systems was established. Did I say that accurately, Greg?
Well, it's actually the rationale behind how the systems were formed.
Formed, right. Even more than funded, right.
Right. The public libraries drive the formation of a library system. And within the public library service areas, all types of libraries within are members of that same system as well.
Right. So
if I can touch on what Monica said, like that's a great example of removing barriers, right? So if we aren't seeing the school library representation that we think there should be, we need to think through like, well, what is that about? Is that about the time of our meetings? Is that about the accessibility to our meetings? Is that about, whatever pieces exist for that role? And then identify what are the things that we can adjust that make it more conducive to having that representation. Because I think, for some of these things, it's going to be simple logistical differences that could make it far more open. And for some of them, they're going to be far more significant barriers in terms of, people's educational backgrounds and how they feel encouraged to serve in this capacity, right? So there's some pipeline issues in terms of that the field of library sciences is largely white, largely women, right? Like those. So when we think about those systemic barriers, we kind of think of it as like, think of a line, and there's the above the line stuff that maybe we as Rails don't directly have control over, but we can advocate or we can, encourage change in those larger systemic pieces that are outside of our control. And then that below the line is like, oh, here's the things that we absolutely do control in terms of just how we set up our team here. Those are kind of some of the easier fixes that we might adjust, and then think about kind of what's that above the line stuff that we need to think about long-term advocacy for changing.
Right.
And can I say something about a perceived barriers that you're talking about them? So, and Biz, I totally agree with you. We have to be intentional and active about removing perceived barriers. And one of the things I've learned working on the EDI committee is that we have a huge influx of people who aren't directors or managers on that committee. And I've spoken to some of them, and many of them are also people of color from marginalized communities. And I've spoken to some of them, and many of them said, hey, I never thought I could do anything with Rails because I'm not a manager.
Yeah.
And this at-large seats should really be marketed to people who aren't in leadership positions normally, so that we can get that representation, since so many are in the trust, we have to have in the trustee position. And I think that we need to do better making it clear that they're welcome, and not just when we're talking about, hey, we want you on EDI. We had to turn people away. Some of those same people also serve. I talked to Cindy at ILA recently about a few of these people who I think would be great to serve on our board. And she said some of them are on the Reaching Forward committee and do great work. And so the Reaching Forward committee also actively reaches out to non-directors and administrators.
Yeah, a huge part of that is about visibility and transparency, right? Making sure people know this is for you, right? And then, I think at least initially in the first few years, there's going to need to be a recruitment aspect. There's going to need to be folks on the board that reach out to people they know and say, hey, I really think you would be good at this. I talked to Dee about, like, in terms of the visibility piece, there needs to be a forum of like, hey, do you want to consider going up for an election? Here's how to do it, right? Like, I'm a school board member, right? The Illinois Association of School Boards does a whole webinar about, you're thinking of running, here's what you need to know, right? So there could be that kind of thing. And then in terms of the selection down the road, you also need to give those folks a chance to be as visible as some of the people that are more well-known. So then having a candidate forum where everybody can answer questions and be seen, and right, those kind of things can help equal out the playing field a little bit, so that it isn't just someone who has large name recognition is always getting the opportunities.
So it's not something that is going to be easy, if just to identify, the barriers, to identify how to do the recruitment, et cetera. One of the things we talked about last spring or summer after the election was people don't vote either, So anyway, that's why I think we need to spend some time really thinking about this so we do it right. And I think that the policy committee needs to be the committee that is charged with, working on how to do this appropriately, since that's why we have a policy committee. So the only thing I'm asking I think we do what we have the history of doing in terms of, selecting a person to fill the vacancy, but we, focus on EDI as well as other, Rails, experience or whatever, but that we, really do need to work on the overall process. It's time that we do that. That's what I wanted to say.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. I'm sure Alex and the policy committee are looking forward to taking on that project.
In the meantime, the executive committee will also be busy. So
yes, they will.
We will, and I have some, as I said, some ideas for criteria. So all right, thank you very much. This is a very important thing to do. Very important.
On to 8.2, the organization chart revision. Deidre?
Yep. So yes, we have made some happy changes in our staffing structure. We did promote Sharon to be the finance department manager, as you know. We also have promoted, and there she is, she popped in. We also have promoted Samantha Daly to be the HR manager. Sam really has stepped up and just does amazing work. And so the organization chart reflects that, and it is your purview to approve the organization chart. I do want to also say though, and that and this is particularly for Scott and all of you, but we also are saving a little bit of money by doing this. That was not the goal, but it never is a bad thing to make some happy improvements in your staffing. Although of course we do miss Jim. But he is, Sharon is really taken hold, and Sam we know is great, and so happy to also save a little bit of the taxpayers' money, and I would ask that you approve the organization chart as it has been amended.
I'll make a motion to approve that.
Thank you.
Okay. Motion by Scott. How about a second?
Second. It's Chris.
Who was that, Karen?
Chris.
Chris. Okay, Chris. Okay. Emily, will you please call roll?
Sure. Ellie Cox.
Yes.
Alice Creason.
Yes.
Robin Hellenthal.
Yes.
Diane Hollister.
Yes.
Chris Kenny.
Yes.
Jennifer McIntosh.
Yes.
Scott Poynton.
Yes.
Becky Spratford.
Yes.
Beth Teppen.
Yes.
Monica Tolva.
Yes.
Alex Vancina.
Yes.
Aaron Voidick.
Yes.
Sue Busenberg.
Yes.
And Thomas Stagg.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, motion carried.
Awesome. Thank you.
On to 8.3, the executive director's goals. Deidre?
Yes, thank you. So so you have my second quarterly project report per your request that I provide you with quarterly reports. That makes this also the half a year report. So I think we've really accomplished a lot. About the strategic plan. We're going to talk about that later again today. And I know you're happy with it because you showed that this morning. Goal 2, we're really, I have my fingers crossed. I'm very hopeful about the statewide database funding as well as the expansion of Cards for Kids. Financially stable. Well, you just heard about the increases in the money, the grants that we've gotten, as well as the increases to the area per capita grant, restructurings, saving a little bit of money as well. Goal 4, working on the EDI initiative. Just talked about another way of doing that in terms of our board diversity as well. And, Biz is going to give a full report later on, so I won't steal any more of her thunder. Advocacy for all types of libraries. we have, continued to work on advocacy. Robin, thank you, is the chair of the committee now. We also have a special librarian, Juanita Harrell, who is also on our strategic planning committee, and Amy Walsh, who works at Joliet High School, is on the committee too. Data, there's a lot going on with data. I told you about the school data project. He has not, Grant has not been doing much consulting this year. He's been busy doing other things, but I think, we need to more than cut him a break for that, because he's doing other things because we're all begging and telling him to. Purchasing programs definitely growing, as you can see here from this data provided by Layla. Goal 8 about schools, doing the additional questions for school libraries and certification, and the research assistant. Continue, efforts to, modernize delivery. You'll hear, and financial efficiency will be giving a full report on the RFP next month. Working with IHLS and CPL. Well, we had a great collaborative meeting yesterday on a huge project, have regular meetings established with CPL, restructured finance and HR, and that's it. So I think we've made a lot of progress in a half a year. I don't know what I'm going to do the rest of the year, Well, kidding.
Well, I'm sure you'll find plenty of stuff.
Yeah, I'm sure I will. Any questions about anything?
Next up is Monica with their strategic plan.
Thank you very much, Tom. And hello to everyone. Thank you so much for being at the meeting this morning. We wanted to take an opportunity to extend the conversation that we had this morning, as well as note that there are parts of the things that you had updated that Emily, I believe, sent out to all of you via email during lunch. And if you haven't had a chance to look at it, we can also put it on the screen. But we tried to just update the draft strategic plan. Thank you very much. The draft strategic plan with the comments that you all created at the meeting this morning at 11. So just to highlight how those were changed, we'll note in the vision that's high. It says the thriving libraries are essential to all who live, who learn, live, or work in Illinois. We did update the order just to make that alphabetical. And we did include the word essential. We know there was some conversation about that in both directions, so we thought we'd share that with you here. There were 3 examples, of course, that all were very similar. And so we sat down just at the break in between and tried to pull together the conversation and do the one we thought was most representative, but very interested to hear your thoughts on that. And I know Dee is here. Do you want to say anything else about that piece of it?
No, we like you said, we just were trying to, mush them together in the best possible way, but it doesn't have to be this. Yep. And then Monica, what did you, the other, Monica T.
Yes.
Let's
I
see.
just had a couple of notes. So objective 3 of goal 2, I feel like is very tightly worded that only applies to public libraries. And certainly school libraries have the same EDI goals for our staff and our representation. So I wonder if there's a way to reword that so it doesn't seem so restrictive to just public libraries and public library boards.
Objective 3, goal 2.
And that is, I'll just read it aloud if you let. It's that work with Rails members to identify and implement ways to diversify Illinois library boards and staff in order to increase representation and better reflect the communities they serve.
Okay.
But Monica, we don't call out any, Monica Tova,
Oh,
sorry,
yeah.
we don't call out any groups there.
Well, Illinois library boards, school libraries are not governed by library boards, and school libraries have staff who are certified teachers. I know it just seems like the words apply to one kind of library instead of being more general words about, to diversify, those in charge of libraries and to diversify the people who work in the libraries or something like that. That's just a little more inclusive.
Would an and or staff fix that for you, Monica?
Boards, to diversify Illinois library boards and or staff?
Mm-hmm.
No, because I think then it's saying things that don't apply in this setting. I mean, I don't have a library board, and my staff are not certified teachers. They're classified staff or paras.
Library workers.
Yeah.
Library members of all Rails members of all types to identify and implement ways to diversify Illinois library boards and library workers in order to increase representation and better reflect the communities they serve.
Yeah, that helps.
Can I ask maybe a question that shows my ignorance on how all of the library things work, but with my school board hat on this, I'm not sure what Rails's influence is on whether schools select a more diverse librarian. So what is when we think about this as the strategic plan for Rails,
what could Rails do?
What is the actionable part that Rails could do to influence?
Yeah, no, yeah,
I'm not sure what that is.
Point well taken. Certainly Rails has no influence over who gets elected to school boards. So I don't know.
But isn't that true of any board? It's true of public library boards too. Rails doesn't really affect that.
But Rails can put together best practices about how to diversify your board that member libraries could choose to use or not. I don't think Rails is gonna get in the lane of trying to influence how school boards, right? Like that's a whole other mechanism. So yeah. I'm not in sentiment, I'm with you. I'm just curious, like what's the right language and whether there is an actionable piece. Because when we think about the strategic plan, we should be able to go back to everything and say, you didn't do this. Here's what you could have done, right? If I don't know what the path is that Rails could do to influence diversifying librarians selected by school boards.
I'm going to back up Monica. That's a good catch, Monica, because most of the special libraries don't have boards either.
Okay.
So
maybe it's just something like to diversify
governing bodies,
those who govern or those who
governing
bodies is
governing
what I was
bodies
suggest.
of library. Yeah. And I actually don't have a problem with the word staff.
Okay.
I think I'm fine leaving that because this may be just generally applicable to people who work in libraries.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for listening. And then,
of course.
And then just I don't want to jump ahead, but maybe I'll get mine out of the way and then other people can have a turn. But in objective 1 of goal 4, it would be great if you would just list ISLE, the Association of Illinois School Library Educators, by name as you list the other cooperating organizations.
Yes, we'll add Chicago Public Library as well.
Good. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Very good. As I said, in my overview here, I mean, we would love if you would approve this as amended, because then we can get going. But if you need to, think about it for another month, we understand.
So I've done a lot of strategic plans in my many years, and I'm all for approving this because a strategic plan should be a living document anyway, that gets amended over time. I'm all for, speaking to the other board members, I'm all for approving it as amended today because we seem to have a general consensus that we're happy with it, but that doesn't preclude us from looking at it and adding amendments and talking about it going forward.
Absolutely.
We also think you'll really see a lot as the action plans and the metrics move forward, where there's a lot more detail that's built into those that will really reflect the actual practices that Rails is taking to move towards these objectives and goals. So I do think a lot more will become apparent in terms of the action plan. And as you see those action steps, that will really show how we're planning to move these more general and big picture ideas forward.
Oh, we can obviously keep talking, but I mean, to roll the ball a little bit, I mean, I'll make a motion to approve this plan as amended today.
I second it, Becky.
Okay, Scott and Becky, any, is there any further discussion needed? Okay, Emily, will you please call roll?
Yes. Alice Creason,
Yes.
Robin Hellenthal,
Yes.
Diane Hollister.
Oh, she had to leave the meeting.
Oh, that's right. Chris Kenny,
Yes.
Jennifer McIntosh,
Yes.
Scott Poynton,
Yes.
Becky Stratford,
Yes.
Beth Teppen,
Yes.
Monica Tova,
Yes.
Alex Vincina,
Yes.
Sue Busenberg,
Yes.
Haley Cox,
Yes.
and Thomas Stagg.
Yes, thank you, Emily. Motion carried.
Awesome. Thank you. Yes.
Okay, on to.
I think Karen, are you trying to?
Yeah, I'm
you wanna-
sorry. I was unmuting instead of, or the up. Anyway, you didn't call my name, but I'm saying yes too.
Sorry.
Okay.
That's okay.
Karen Wojcik.
Yes.
Thank you. I feel you. It's end of the alphabet woes. I'm usually one at the end.
Okay, on to 9.2, the EDI update.
Yes. So I'm just going to turn it over to Biz. We've been working very hard with Biz, both through our board EDI committee and our climate team. And obviously she's chiming right in today because I think she feels very invested in Rails, which we're very happy about. So without further ado, Biz, please take it away.
Thank you, Deirdre. I'm excited about the work that we've been doing with Rails. What I wanted to do today is kind of give a high level overview and then give you an opportunity for some questions. I wanted to start with kind of giving you the kind of business case of EDI, not because I don't think you all are already on board with thinking these things are important, but I think as board members, you're often stewards for the work. And so making sure we understand kind of what are all the benefits of this work. So these are, two questions I think you can ask yourselves as we go through, what actions are you taking that can help Rails navigate this, and what are the perceived or real obstacles to some of this work within your institutions. So I'm going to try to move that up there a little bit. So when we think about return on investment, right, we're thinking about workforce representation. So, certainly wanting to be employers of choice is a motivation for EDI, and attracting highly competent folks and having increased retention. When you think about the workplace characteristics, there's higher collaboration and idea generation and innovation. All of these things have been found over and over again to be parts of having a more diverse workforce. And so, we also see there's a lot of organizational success that happens. So when we think about Rails, so much of your work is outreach and modeling work for member libraries. Certainly some of the projects we've been talking about are thinking about how do we have more success in recruiting more diverse staff and more retention. And so these are all aspects of doing this work. I think we throw the words diversity and inclusion out there a lot, and I just want to kind of highlight diversity without inclusion really decreases collaboration and innovation. It is not a thing we want to do where we just try to go get a bunch of different looking people and put them in a room. They truly, the inclusion piece is critical. When we think, and that's why we can't just be thinking about recruitment. We always need to be thinking about retention too, and we need to be thinking about what do we need to do to change the conditions that would make our organization more attractive to a diversity of folks, and what would make their engagement and participation more meaningful. Just having people in the room isn't enough if those people's perspectives are not valued and listened to and encouraged. So I think there's some misconceptions sometimes when we talk about EDI. So really, this is a lens to consider all the work. It shouldn't be like, oh, EDI is over here and then everything else is just like business as usual. It should be that there's no conversation that's happening institutionally that isn't considering this piece, and it's a way of operating, and there's all sorts of benefits that come from it. I think that organizations struggle when they treat it as a siloed initiative, or when they think of it as a checklist, or they think of it's not really relevant to what's going on. It's this extra thing. And I will say, you know, I've been really impressed, and you'll probably hear me praise Rails a few times since I have done this work with lots and lots of different organizations. You know, they really have diligently engaged in so many considerations, and really, you know, it keeps bleeding into all the other areas, because once they're working on this project, they're like, wait, we need to make sure we're thinking of this in the strategic plan, and we need to make sure we're thinking of it in this space. And it's really been very positive. You know, I think for a lot of organizations, they start from a compliance mindset. And so they're, you know, they're doing these things because they feel like legally they have to, or, you know, for workplace cultural reasons they need to. And so when that happens, there's really not a lot of substantive change. You don't see big changes in policies and culture and the ways decisions are made and power. And so that can actually have a real negative impact on employees, that there's, you know, people may be more silent, they may be more fearful of retaliation. It can have a lot of organizational impact, and a lot of the EDI benefits go unrealized because the mindset was, we're just doing this because we have to, not understanding the benefits and value of it. So when the workplace culture is really focused on inclusion, then we see kind of all these transformative ways and all these ripple effects of the work, right? We see that policies change and practices change and norms change, because it's not, excuse me, something that's performative or checklisty. And so, you know, then we really see a behavioral change and a cultural change that then continues to pay dividends, because it attracts a totally different population of employees that maybe weren't as interested before, and they come with a whole new list of ideas and ways to serve communities that hadn't been previously engaged. So, you know, this is just a scale to think about inclusion and belongingness, which are really critical. So, you know, thinking of this from being excluded, right, all the way up to be fully included. And when you're fully included, people feel like they are able to fully bring their whole selves to work and be safe to contribute what their perspective is, and that they're, you know, intentionally and deliberately welcomed and heard and valued and respected. And I think, you know, you'll find different areas in different places along this scale. You know, it's not where everybody starts, but really thinking about, okay, where are we maybe more in a tolerance place than a full inclusion place, right? Where are we maybe not fully getting the value of this work is really important, and thinking about where we can engage people differently so that they can, you know, fully participate. So that's kind of my, you know, just kind of giving the grounding of what the work is at any institution. And I want to talk a little more specifically about how it's going at Rails. And so the, excuse me. So we've been doing a lot of foundational framework work with the staff. So we have, COVID has given us, you know, as everything, not the most ideal training experience, right? We're doing 4-hour Zooms, which is not, if you had asked me 3 years ago whether I would ever agree to doing EDI work in a 4-hour Zoom, I would have laughed at you, but here's where we are. And so, you know, we did a lot of work in terms of just definitions and concepts, really thinking about our own identities and culture and bias. We did a specific section on gender. We just did a conversation on relationships, where we talk about what I call the big 5: trust, respect, healthy conflict, collaboration, and accountability, but all through an EDI lens, and thinking about how our own identities shape our relationship with those words. They're words we use hundreds of times a week, and assume there's a universal definition and universal expectations, and they're just not. So that was, you know, I thought a great session. Hard to do over Zoom, but people were really engaged. So some of the topics that are coming up, we're going to start doing some kind of skill building, right? Moving from that foundational work to building skills. So we're going to do some scenarios that are more kind of interpersonal, and then we'll build into some more work situations, and then kind of build our capacity to think about equitable decision and policy making. And I believe that it's really important in any of this work for us to be exploring whiteness and white supremacy, and how that shows up in workplace culture and characteristics, and how that can be a barrier to us having a truly vibrant community. So those are some of the educational topics that are on their way. In terms of the climate team, we've been meeting monthly, and these are the 4 relationships we've been exploring: the staff to member relationship, staff to partner, staff to board, and staff to staff. And for each, we have separate conversations where we do an inventory and just kind of take stock of all the things that are going on. And I have a toolkit that I guide folks through for us to really identify what's happening, and then we move to planning and then to implementation. And I just want to highlight here, I have probably done specifically the climate work with over 25 organizations at this point. And it's not overstating to say Rails has moved from idea to action faster than any organization I've dealt with. The staff that is on this committee should be very proud of the work that they're doing. It's very easy. Some of these things are large and complicated and very difficult to kind of parse out where do you start and where do you go with it. And they have really taken some phenomenal ideas and run with it. So we've completed the inventory and planning phases. We're now in this kind of implementation phase, but they have robust projects and goals that have been identified and are initiated and really moving much faster than, as I said, any organization I've worked with. So they should be really proud of the work that they've been doing. So moving ahead, we're going to be looking at staff buy-in, right? How do we roll out this work that the team has been doing and engage the rest of the staff in this work and kind of share responsibility? We want to be thinking about the development and implementation of all of these goals. Then really looking at like policy, handbook, all of those pieces. And then, a big project that's come out of this is thinking about a cohort for member libraries so that they can go through a similar learning experience as the Rails staff is going through, and that we can be a model for other organizations that want to do this work. And as we move forward, the climate team will, kind of be continuing to troubleshoot around EDI and systematize it. And then obviously there's, goals within the strategic plan that they will be working on. So we also had board committees, some of you participated on, and we identified some projects and we worked in subcommittees to get that work done. I think the conversation has happened, but I just want to highlight that, I think one of the challenges of doing that work was kind of a disparity in knowledge of the folks that were on these committees. And so we had to kind of, reimagine what was the best way to utilize the expertise of these folks. So we are doing some significant training to try to give everybody that baseline and kind of foundational place to start. But, really thinking more of having Rails do some of the leadership on these projects and have this committee be more in an advisory capacity. We want to make sure that we weren't creating more work for Rails staff by having these subcommittee structures. So this is where it is moving at this point. And then I think it's important for us to think about what are some of the pitfalls. And I have to say again, often when I'm sharing this pitfalls, I can highlight a few that the organization I'm working with is struggling with right then. But this is really something that in its setup, Rails has really avoided a lot of these things, right? So they've had this kind of long-term commitment to learning. They've been, comfortable moving at a pace that keeps us moving, but doesn't have us kind of skipping and trying to get to the to-do list and trying to get to the application before folks are ready. And we've really been able to create, I think, a powerful learning space, even with the challenges of Zoom and the kind of 4-hour structure that's required because of the delivery staff. So, and again, often in terms of structure, folks are having this be siloed, or there's one staff person who's supposed to be doing all the EDI work, but this has really been infused in the structure across all department areas and across all projects and things. And so it's really been far more successful, I think, and will be far more sustainable than if it was only being taken up by HR or only being taken up by other areas. So, I think it has not been focused on the optics of it. A lot of organizations are like, we're gonna put out our glossy brochure, right, that has all these pictures, and we're gonna say that this is how we're doing diversity, and that it has really been I think a heartfelt and meaningful engagement of acknowledging where the lack of knowledge is and what we can do with that, so that we can start thinking about real cultural shift. So moving forward, thinking about kind of the assessment of where we are. As I said, I think the staff development has done a remarkable job of being really engaged, even with the logistical complications. And I think we'll be able to build on that knowledge. We're doing a survey to kind of check in with people and say, okay, do we stay with that 4-hour structure, or do we think about different structures? The climate team is, frankly, ahead of schedule on a lot of their projects. I think when you think about the strategic plan, often folks are at a starting point with they set the goal and then they start the work. In the EDI space, Rails is already really meaningfully moving towards a lot of the goals and objectives that are set in that number 2. So I think, you know, I'm very hopeful about what we can accomplish moving ahead, because a lot of that's already in process. So as I said, the EDI board committee, I think, is now kind of back on track, and we can utilize them more effectively moving forward. We're moving towards establishing this cohort with the hope of, you know, getting that started in the fall, doing applications this spring. I think that has a significant potential for impact across Rails, because we can then, you know, build everyone's capacity at numerous organizations simultaneously, and that can only, you know, there's exponential potential in the cohort. I think it's a great investment for Rails and best way to, you know, institute a systemic wide change. And then, you know, when we think about strategic planning and best practices, like the board diversity project of really thinking about the election process, and making sure that that Rails can be, you know, the example and the model on a lot of these things, that we can develop kind of a best practices toolkit for libraries that want to engage in this work, and that we can customize that so that, you know, that folks that are at an organization that has 70 staff members versus folks that are at an organization that has 4 staff members, right? They're gonna need to go about this work differently. Okay, that was a lot of information in a short amount of time. So, you know, I think in your board roles, it's always important to think about. And as I said, I've mentioned I share a love and appreciation of your role as board members, because I do this in my volunteer life. But, you know, thinking about EDI benchmarks and what needs board involvement and what can individual board members do to support all of these efforts, I think is really important. Certainly from the board's perspective, diversifying the board, supporting leadership, supporting systems for tracking progress, supporting holding staff accountable. And then, you know, I think we want to move towards having some EDI rubrics that we use for decision making that both Rails will be using internally, but also you could use as a board. So I'm going to stop there and let you ask some questions. I know it's a lot of info, but I wanted to make sure we had the whole overview.
I just want to say something as a member of the EDI committee, because Biz mentioned the cohort, but the people that weren't in the meeting might not know that. Just think like Directors University idea, but for EDI training. And that's what the cohort model will be. That's a very oversimplification, but that's the idea. So people would apply and they would go through this training with guidance like a Directors University.
Thank you, Beck. Great. Questions, thoughts?
I just want to give a shout out to Biz. I mean, she's been really great, really great. And the climate team and the way that Joe in particular has led it. And Monica, the work that she's done on leading the EDI committee. It's really there's a lot of people in Rails that are very involved and invested in this. And we are now, as Biz said, at the point of kind of pushing it out a little bit in a good way, not pushing too hard, just bringing people in is probably a better way of saying it.
I want to second what Biz said about the Rails staff and the EDI committee. Trying to think of the words. It's been a long day. I am also engaged in this work in my work and I work with libraries, and there is a lot of resistance often, and I have to battle against that with my training partner that I do this with. And I have seen that both with the committee and the staff, that I have been one of those people that won't let the forward progress stop because I was afraid it was going to, because like Biz, I've seen it. And I have to be honest that I have not seen it. So I'm glad to hear that it's not just my perception. So
we have a great staff, we really do. So at all levels. So this is one more example.
I just want to jump in with something that Joe just said in the chat, which is that our members have articulated the importance of this work.
Right.
As always, our members inspire our services. I think that's very true. And it really came through in the strategic planning process. I know many of you who had the opportunity to attend those town halls and to really hear what our members are looking for. This was mentioned time and again as something that was very important to them.
Yeah.
Well, either I so articulately described everything that's going on so that there's no questions, or we're just getting to the point where it's 3 o'clock on a Friday. Feel free to reach out with any additional questions. And as board members, please give a pat on the back to all the rail staff, because I really think they're doing a phenomenal job. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you, Biz, and thanks for all your help. Sorry, Tom.
Oh, no problem. Thank you, Biz and Deidre. Next, we have Monica Tolva with the board development topic, school libraries, trends and challenges. Monica?
Monica, you're muted.
Sorry, you would think I'd be better at Zoom after teaching on Zoom for so long, but too many screens going on. So, okay, let me try that again. All right. So thank you very much for giving me the chance to talk to you about trends and challenges in school libraries. And first of all, I'm Monica Tolva, and I am very glad to serve Rails and the school library community. I am on Instagram and Twitter at Monica Tolva. So if you follow any of those, you can see some of the day-to-day fun stuff from my school. So I'm getting married in May, and my new last name is one that any librarian would love. I will soon be Monica Caldecott.
Wow.
I know, yes.
Was that a criteria, Monica, or did that just?
I love him anyway, of course, my British guy, but it is very cool that that the name made my heart leap a little bit even more.
Right, exactly, sure.
Yes. So, okay, so my background, I have been coming up on 20 years here as the library media specialist at Vernon Hills High School. We are in the north suburbs of Chicago. We have about 1,600 students. My first library experience was as an elementary school librarian in District 25 in Arlington Heights. I also worked as an academic librarian at Northern Illinois University, their Hoffman Estates campus. And I had a stint as a public librarian at Arlington Heights Memorial Library. So before that, I was a newspaper reporter for a daily paper in King County, Illinois. And I went to board meetings and news from 5 school districts, 5 park districts, and 5 library districts. So I saw a wide range of all of the great governance in our area. And when it was time for me to remake myself, it was schools that I really wanted to be a part of. So what are some common threads seen in school libraries? First of all, I would say school librarians work alone. School librarians are often the only library employee. They may be responsible for more than one library, more than one school library in the district. And at the elementary and the middle school level, they may have a fixed schedule with classes to be with all day long. And here is a case study. Megan Rasmussen is the district librarian at Round Lake Area School District 116. That is in the Lake County, McHenry County kind of area. And she is the single certified librarian in the entire K-12 district. There's 13 schools in the district. She tries to visit 7 schools per week. She's responsible for all of the collection development for all of those libraries. She also is the high school librarian teacher. So she will teach classes at the library, and she is to supervise and train all of the library media aides across the district. Megan says, I wouldn't trade my job for anything, even if I wish there were more of me so that I could do more for my students and my staff. And this is a trend, unfortunately, that is growing. In a big District 211, which is a big high school district, Schaumburg, Hoffman Estates, they used to have 2 certified librarians at each of these large high school libraries. And the district has a policy now, when one of them retires, they're not replacing that role. So even school districts you know, that have in the past had good staffing levels are decreasing. Even some districts are turning to non-certified librarians. So someone with a master's in library science, but is not a certified school librarian, they are hiring them in a full-time or part-time role. Here's another case study. Andrea Perrin is the LRC director at Woodland Middle School, District 50 in Gurnee. And again, she is the solo librarian for her very large middle school. She has 1,800 students in the middle school. She has 2 aides. The 3rd aide position was recently eliminated, and she sees an average of 14 classes per week by herself. She's circulated, you know, 11,000 books. So it's a very busy place, and she is juggling everything by herself. And this is her quote: "I definitely feel stretched thin." I think we would understand how she would feel that. So for each one of these trends, I want to end with, how could Rails help? So I guess, first of all, I would say that Rails can share with our school library members the vibe that you are seen and you are one of us, that you are part of this organization, that in the past, maybe you didn't know what Rails could do for you or how you fit into Rails. We could definitely try to acknowledge the solo librarian and the school schedule some meetings or professional development after 3:30, offer recorded sessions, take questions ahead of time. Even if they know they can't participate, but they have a question and they want to listen, they could do that later. And really, we would love it if Rails would add to the voices advocating for the state requirement of a certified school librarian in every school building. Currently, ISBE only requires a certified school librarian in every district. And so Megan's case study shows how that can be very untenable and doesn't serve the students who need a librarian in their building. So another trend we see is that school librarians are working hard to create diverse collections. We use all of our professional collection development sources to create diverse collections. This picture is of an installation in my library classroom, and it's inspired by Dr. Rudine Bishop's imagery of books as windows and mirrors. And we try really hard to show a diverse representation of books in our libraries. And we are trying hard to make sure that our books represent that. How could Rails help? Always PD on building a diverse collection, featuring Rails school members that are doing a great job like that. Also use Rails professional and political platform to support our growing book challenges. Hashtag freedom is a growing trend in school libraries where we're trying to support each other and share news about school challenges. Thank you, Rails, for your support of ISLE's intellectual freedom statement, and we just love to see that our colleagues in other library types are standing with us during these very hard times. So school libraries are embracing genres. Many school libraries are arranging fiction by genre. This image shows the 11 genres that we use at our school library. And the goal is really to encourage student choice and develop independence. So rather than a student coming to me saying, you know, I like mysteries, where are your mysteries? And I have to say, well, they're arranged by author's last name. That doesn't do that student any good. So, but also know that we're not professional catalogers. We definitely take a do what works kind of approach. So the cataloging in a school library can be of wide-ranging choices. How could Rails help? Again, more professional development on genreification, especially genreifying Dewey nonfiction, which sounds a little like not necessary. Isn't Dewey already like that? But there are some school libraries that are trying to make this genreification go across fiction and nonfiction. Cataloging basics always would help us. Most school libraries use Follett's Destiny Library Automation Suite. We need to know how to navigate resource sharing. you know, we don't get delivery. We don't share books except with other libraries in our school districts. And OCLC is like an unknown concept a little bit. A couple of years ago, many school libraries in Illinois were encouraged to join OCLC, but most of us don't know what that means. How can that help us? What, you know, anyway, we just need help with that. School libraries teach media literacy. As noted in one of the committee reports, there's a new state law effective next school year that calls for every high school student to receive a unit of study on media literacy. And some districts may adopt this K-12 just because it kind of makes sense to ramp the students up in their skills and their knowledge. And school librarians definitely want to be at the heart of this mandate. But there are so many unknowns. What does a unit of study mean? How will this be checked or enforced by ISBE? What's a solo librarian like me supposed to do when I can't teach a lesson to every class in the school? You know, imagine what the case study Megan or Andrea could do. They have even more students than I do. So how could Rails help? More PD, featuring school librarians who are excelling at this topic. A lot of times we just need to be inspired. Like, you can do this. This is how somebody else figured this out. They can't teach every freshman class. So instead, they're going to make a series of videos, or they're going to have one, co-teach with one teacher who then teaches other teachers. Advocate for school librarians as much as we can. So what are some of the challenges that school libraries are struggling with? We have the same challenges as schools as a whole. There are very few substitute teachers. Our schedule changes all the time. Vernon Hills High School has had 4 schedules in 2 years. Another schedule was announced this week, and I hear that there's a school board committee which is thinking of a whole new schedule for next year. So the bell rings and I have no idea what I'm supposed to be doing at that time. We're finding that students are really unprepared for school. There's falling child literacy interest and skill. Vandalism is kind of rampant. There's a lot of weird chaos and TikTok challenges and videos which impact life in school libraries. This is a quote from a teacher on Twitter. Being a teacher has never been easy. It's hard every damn day. We impact children's lives. But this year, I have never seen as much worry, frustration, dysregulation, and burnout as I'm seeing right now. Everything is a lot and it's heavy. I'm trying every day, but it's exhausting. School libraries are still recovering from COVID. Maybe our aides got laid off, our book budgets were taken for other needs. In my school, they laid off 6 library aides across 3 resource areas. Hired 2 aides away to special services department who we never got back. They reappropriated my entire book budget to pay for COVID mitigation systems. So I had 0 budget at all to buy books in the year 2020. And really, we're also finding that teachers are kind of falling out of the mode of collaborating with their librarian. They're used to doing like we're doing. They're sitting in a room with the doors closed and they're on Zoom. Even though we're face-to-face again, those habits are hard. They're just worried about getting through their content. And oftentimes library space is used for other reasons. Here is a case study. Tripp Elementary School in Buffalo Grove, Illinois. The school librarian is Amy Goldstein, and she has a half-time aide. She gets an aide for 2.5 days a week. And the library is now used as overflow from the lunchroom. She calls it the lunchbrary. And this impacts, as you can imagine, how she can use this library space. She can hardly host a class in there. If a student wants a book that's over in the lunch area, they have to come and get it later. They can't get it then because of social distancing. And don't even get her started about the garbage that she cleans up in the lunchbrary at the end of every school day. School libraries do not have enough funding. Some school libraries have 0 budgets. When Greg McCormick was talking about the per capita, I know school librarians that are asked to fulfill the per capita application, and then the money is taken from them. So schools are lying and taking the library money away, and they have zero budget. They can buy nothing all year long. We're also finding it costs so much to offer titles in multiple formats. When there's a great new title, like, you know, the Newbery winner or the Caldecott winner, to buy that book in print and ebook and audiobook really, really is stretching our small budgets. And we find that some of the best consortium deals that Rails, makes don't apply to schools. And so, there's cost saving benefits that other member libraries are being offered that we can't take advantage of. And like one idea comes to mind about Overdrive. So I pay the same price to buy an audiobook that I might circulate 2 times a year. As a public library, they pay the same price to buy that audiobook that they might circulate 100 times a year. So the deals and the inequity of funding is really hard. So how could Rails help? Layla, keep going. You and Anna, keep going and offer consortial deals that apply to school libraries. The group database and digital content subscriptions would be awesome if each library didn't have to put money towards that. Also, maybe there's a way to help school libraries negotiate with local public libraries to share their Overdrive titles. We just before COVID, I was so glad that our school made an agreement with our local public library district, Cook Memorial Public Library District, to extend our students just by their school ID, not that they have to have a public library card. And that was like a lifesaver, that they could use our collection of ebooks and audiobooks as well as our local public library collections. I would also love it if public libraries would just say that every student with a school ID could have a library card, and not have to say, well, your parents have to go in with 3 forms of residency approval, and a 15-year-old who needs a book for a school project just is going to give up and not use that, and not use a library resource for that. So these are, I'll leave you with a couple of images from our library. The curved part of the building is our library. We have a beautiful view. Look to the west and we see beautiful sunset each day. So thank you so much for listening to all of our, I'm not going to say woes, but the challenges and the trends that school libraries are seeing. I am very glad that I get to sit with this great group and try to find and make a list of the things that I can advocate to my school library colleagues that we should look to Rails for, and learn to be good members of Rails as well. So thank you.
That was awesome, Monica, and really, really awful too.
Yeah. Thank you, Becky, for your notes about go visit your local school library. It is great to see them in work, and if you could volunteer and help them out, even better.
I do want to say that we tried with standards. I mean, we have really tried, and we will try again. But yeah. So yeah.
I know, right? ISP is their own animal. And we are trying to get the message out that even local unions should try to get that into the union agreement, that every school deserves a certified school librarian. And so school, union contracts could be a way to help that along too.
Yep. It was very sobering.
Yeah, Monica, thank you for that information. That was awful lot to think about, and sounds like there's some volunteer opportunities out there too.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for the chance to share.
Now we're on to Rails board member reports. Now is the time that board members can share any news about their area or library. I think Mr. Poynton might have something coming up.
I do. So 2 days ago, my library organization celebrated its 100th birthday. So we're very proud and happy about that. And it was a long, crazy 100 years. We were 4 different organizations across that 100 years, but there's a common thread that weaves its way all the way through. So yeah, we're very proud and happy to be able to celebrate that. And we're going to do many things this year to celebrate that milestone, but across about a 5-week period here early in 2022, we're having library partner celebrations where we're inviting in elected officials and lots of other library partners to celebrate, but also to reveal, or I guess that's the word, to launch a brand new foundation that we've created for our library. And we had the first of those events last Friday, and raised nearly $3,000 in the evening for the foundation, and it was great. So yeah, that's my report that I'm celebrating this week.
I'm looking forward to the event next week that I will be attending. So yes, excellent.
Scott, I saw your post on social media. They're really good. So awesome. Congratulations. Any other reports?
I'd like to make a public thank you to Representative LaShawn Ford, who gave LaGrange Library $25,000 for like the 4th year in a row. And he is always supporting, and he comes to see the library regularly. He gave us money to support our services and programs. And the faith he shows in us every year has been wonderful. And we don't even really ask for it, but he knows we need it. So I just wanted to say that.
Great. Wow.
Awesome.
I just wanted to mention an upcoming event. April 29th is the day of the Information Literacy Summit. It's in its 20th year. It's now being co-hosted by College of DuPage and DePaul University. And the keynote speaker, I think, will be of interest to people, Miriam Sweeney, and she's going to be talking on algorithmic literacies and just really kind of thinking about computing and our knowledge and understanding of how computers are so pervasive in our information landscape our whole life. So that's going to be an interesting topic. We're particularly going to be trying to reach out to school librarians to engage them as attendees and participants. There's still an open call for presentations, open through the 4th now, and registration will open in the next month. But just wanted to get it on your radar.
Sounds like a fun topic. Especially when you hear all this metaverse stuff and all this other stuff that's way beyond me. Any other announcements? If none, we'll go on to the meeting recap and agenda building for the next board meeting. The next board meeting will be Friday, February 25th at 1 p.m. Included on the agenda will be Grant Halter with measuring the impact of Rails programs and services. And Hallie Cox is going to talk about specialized libraries. Is there anything else we need to put on the agenda?
Well, delivery will be on the agenda.
Oh, delivery.
I can't think of anything right now. I think it's too early for the per capita grant, but we may know more about the budget. So.
Awesome.
Yep.
Okay. It's time to go into closed session. The board will move into closed session to discuss matters pertaining to collective negotiations as per 5 Illinois compiled statute, chapter 120, paragraph 2, section 2C2, which states exceptions. A public body may hold closed meetings to consider the following subjects: collective negotiations matters between the public body and employees of their representation, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees. May I have a motion to move into closed session?
So moved. This is Alex.
Okay, Alex, thank you.
Seconded, this is Becky.
Okay, Becky, thank you very much. Emily, will you please call roll?
Yes, Robin Hillball.
Here.
Chris Kenny.
Here.
Jennifer McIntosh.
Yes.
Scott Poynton.
Yes.
Becky Spratford.
Yes.
Beth Teppen.
Yes.
Monica Tolva.
Yes.
Alex Vancina.
Yes.
Karen Wojcik.
Yes.
Sue Busenberg.
Yes.
Ellie Cox. Can Hallie leave?
Did we lose Hallie?
And Alice Creason.
Yes.
I think we might have lost. And Tom Stagg.
Yes.
We have a quorum.
Okay.
Our motion passed.
Okay. Okay. All others need to leave except for Deidre, Monica, Mark, and Emily.
And also Margaret Kostopoulos, our attorney, is in this meeting as well.
Yes.
Are we still closed?
No, we are open.
We're open now.
Yeah, we're not live streaming yet, so.
Okay, Scott has to leave in a minute. As far as we know, the meeting will be remote, but we don't know yet. I mean, you know, yeah, that's my answer. Am I wrong, Monica? No.
We should, if possible, we will have a remote option, but we won't know until the declaration for emergency.
Right.
Can I ask when the current emergency expires? I can't keep up anymore.
I don't even know. I can't either.
Okay.
It usually happens around right before the board meeting. But you know, at the end of the month, but I don't know.
And
I'm not
Karen-
sure because it didn't apply to this meeting.
Right.
I'll
And-
check it though and send you an email.
Karen had a question.
Yeah, I was wondering, what's the update, if any, on the situation at the St. Charles Library?
I have not heard any update since a couple of days ago. So I don't have any information on that. Do you, Monica? Or anybody?
Has that group bothered any other libraries?
I've heard, but
Not that I. not
So
that I-
they do have a day they're organizing on February 1st. They're
That's next
organizing a
week.
mask off day at schools.
Oh,
And I do know they are marketing to students because my child received something on social media.
oh.
So it's the same group. So
This is Awake, Illinois, correct?
yeah,
And it's for
Yeah,
school.
mask.
Okay.
but that's their next target. And as far as I know from my friends who work there, they're still closed. They had a board meeting to close indefinitely. And they're serving people as best they can without opening the doors, right? As of now.
Are they still
Monica, is that
receiving threats?
I can only give the information that I just checked on their website. So it does look like they posted an update today that said the library is working towards reopening as soon as possible,
Okay.
and that the library will reopen as soon as they finalize the hiring of additional security services. So that's just the note that's available on their website. I don't have additional information, unfortunately.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions or comments? If none, I would like to thank you all for your attendance, and I adjourn this meeting at 4:01 p.m. Thank you all.
Yes, thank you, everybody, for a great couple of meetings. Long day.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.